Looking down from this bridge, many people would even feel their legs go weak because beneath your feet is not a river, not a road, but a cliff 565 meters deep. This height is equivalent to nearly 200 stories. Yet in exactly such a place that makes countless people's scalps tingle, the Chinese insisted on building a bridge here. What is even more unbelievable is that when the bridge plan was announced back then, quite a few foreign experts directly asserted that this kind of canyon bridge simply could not be built. But a few years later, when they came here again, everyone fell silent. A super bridge suspended among the clouds stretched across the two sides. And the most difficult moment was when the two sections of the bridge had to complete a precise connection in mid-air, with the error not allowed to exceed a few millimeters. This bridge is the Beipanjiang Bridge, and it was forced into existence. The residents on the two sides had been separated by the mountains for decades. Children had to leave home before daybreak to go to school, climbing over mountains and crossing ridges for several hours. When it rained, the mountain roads were slippery, and falling over was a common occurrence. So this bridge was not built to break a record, it was built for people. What was the hardest part? Just the first challenge alone was already enough to make most people shrink back. The distance spanning the two sides was 720 meters, with no support point in the middle. The bridge piers could not reach the ground, and traditional bridge building methods could not be used here at all. They were all useless. Yet the second challenge was even more difficult. The canyon terrain was special. Air currents constantly circulated between the valley floor and the mountaintops, and the wind direction had no pattern at all. It could change whenever it wanted. Data showed that the area had more than 150 days of strong winds every year. Doing high-altitude lifting work in a place like this was not called construction. It was called gambling with your life. With these two barriers standing in front of them, those foreign experts who had asserted that the bridge could not be built were not just making sarcastic remarks. The engineering team finally made the decision to adopt a plan that was quite aggressive at the time: a steel-truss cable-stayed bridge. The logic was not complicated. Two giant main towers would stand separately on the edges of the cliffs on both sides, and then dozens of steel cables would lift the entire bridge deck and suspend it in the air without requiring any ground support. The two main towers of the Bay Panjang Bridge are 269 meters and 247 meters high. Take either one of them alone, and it is equivalent to erecting an almost 90-story super high-rise building on the edge of a cliff. The plan had been decided, but immediately after that, an even more deadly problem pushed everyone into a corner. This was the point where the entire project almost became completely stuck. The Bay Panjang region has standard karst terrain. Underground, it is covered with caves, underground rivers, and cracks. Those mountains that look indestructible may already be hollow inside. Once the wrong location is chosen for the foundation, no matter how high the tower is, it would only be a structure expanded over danger. The entire engineering team carried out a copy-style geological survey of the mountains. They drilled layer by layer and checked bit by bit. It took more than a year before they finally found one truly stable rock layer on each side. The pile foundations went more than 20 meters deep into the bedrock and anchored firmly through integral concrete pouring. This stage alone took another full year or more. On the day the bridge towers were erected, the project entered the stage with the highest technical difficulty and also the greatest danger. Extending the bridge deck outward through open air across a span of 720 meters, buildings start folding up from the bottom of the valley was completely impossible. The only way was cantilever assembly, extending simultaneously from both sides toward the center of the canyon, joining one section after another upward. Each section of steel girder weighed more than 100 tons. After being manufactured in the factory, it was transported over a long distance to the site, then lifted by a cable crane to a height of several hundred meters, suspended in mid-air and connected to the previous section. And the construction workers stood at the very front edge of the already completed bridge deck. In front of them was empty space with nothing there. Beneath their feet was a canyon hundreds of meters deep. They held welding torches in their hands, while the wind roared beside their ears. There was absolutely no room for error in this kind of work. The biggest enemy in lifting was not the weight, it was the wind. The wind inside the canyon came without warning. Sometimes a construction window had just opened, all the equipment was ready, and the lifting arm had only just extended when a sudden strong wind came rushing in. Everyone immediately stopped work, returned the equipment to position, and went back to wait for the next opportunity. The engineering team densely installed multiple sets of real-time meteorological monitoring systems around the bridge and watched the wind speed data around the clock. Even if there was only a calm window of 2 or 3 hours, everyone had to move immediately, not daring to waste even a single minute. And in this way, the bridge decks on the two sides moved little by little toward the center of the canyon. 1 meter, another meter, and another meter. The bridge decks on the two sides extended farther and farther, and finally approached the most thrilling moment in the entire construction process: closure. The two bridge structures extending out into the air from opposite directions had to fit together precisely in the very center of the canyon, hundreds of meters above the ground. Steel structures expand and contract with heat and cold. A temperature difference of only a few degrees could cause a dimensional deviation that might make the two sections of bridge completely fail to line up. The engineering team chose the period of the day when the temperature was most stable, and through precise calculations in advance, reserved compensation allowances. They adjusted the position little by little, not overlooking even a deviation of a fraction of a millimeter. On the 10th of September 2016, the final section of steel girder was slowly lifted. After several hours of adjustment, the bridge structures on the two sides completed their connection high in the air, with the arrow controlled to within the millimeter level. At that moment, applause exploded across the site. Many engineers' eyes turned red on the spot. Only they themselves knew how many days and nights they had endured in this canyon. 3 months later, on the 29th December 2016, the Bay Panjang Bridge officially opened to traffic. The bridge deck was 565.4 meters above the river surface and was recognized at the time as the world's highest bridge. However, what is more worth remembering than this number is the real change that happened after the bridge opened. In the past, transporting agricultural products out of the mountains took most of the day. Many things rotted on the road, and more of them spoiled than were sold. After the bridge opened, trucks could enter and leave on the same day, and logistics costs fell substantially. Those villages that in the past could not even receive express deliveries are now different. One bridge changed not only transportation, it changed the entire economic logic of the place. It changed the fate of countless people who originally could not see a way out. Today, the Bay Panjang Bridge is a place that countless people make a special trip to visit. When driving across it, clouds and mist roll beneath your feet, and the river at the bottom of the valley looks as thin as a silver thread. That kind of shock, standing between heaven and earth, can only be understood by someone who has personally stood there. But every time I think of this bridge, what appears in my mind is not 565 meters, nor that millimeter-level precision. What I think of is the first group of people who walked across the bridge on the day it opened. When they lowered their heads and looked at the canyon beneath their feet, what expressions were on their faces?